Hello everybody, welcome to StraightA. Dawson here, back with our NFL power rankings coming up to the end of the season, so things are starting to solidify out for the top teams and the bottom teams. The middle teams are kind of moving up and down, but we kind of take it as we go and kind of just casually go through it all. Either way, if you enjoy the video, please leave a like down below and leave a comment to let us know what we can do for this channel a little bit more. I'm recording this power rankings a little bit later than I usually do just because there was so much with Christmas going on and all that. Now New Year's coming up, about to have a great party and all that good stuff, but no, in all seriousness, a little bit recorded a little later, so the Thursday night game was already played, so I'm going to try not to take that into account. I made these power rankings before that, so I just didn't really get a chance to record the video for it. So either way, we're going to get right into it. I'm going to keep this pretty short and simple because most of these teams are self-explanatory. Carolina Panthers, good performances, especially really good from Bryce Young this last week. Almost beat the Packers. I think they still are the worst team. Commanders, though, are making a fighting effort to be that worst team because I think they had some redeeming qualities of them beginning the season, even halfway through the season. Now they just look like a pile of trash. Granted, I guess they looked all right against the game in the Jets, but there's still many other teams that had more impressive games or showings that I think the Commanders have, gradually worked themselves down to basically the bottom tier. Either way, the Cardinals are up next. I think, again, I still like Kyler Murray. I still like that team, but this game really reminded me that the Cardinals really still have a lot of pieces missing, even with Kyler Murray looking pretty good. Not a lot of whole supporting pieces. Patriots against the Broncos, whatever. I'm not going to talk about too much, but, I mean, the Patriots looked all right. I mean, their offense looked like it was moving. Their defense looked like it's actually pretty solid, so they have a lot of solid pieces. As long as they can keep that structure together and maybe add a couple key pieces to that offense or defense, or both, I think they can have a really strong fighting chance, especially if they bring in a nice little rookie quarterback into this mix. The Jets, I think they've looked really bad for weeks now. I think it's just finally time, even though they won their game. I believe, yeah, they won their game. They haven't looked good. A lot of other teams have more impressive wins or less impressive losses or whatever. It's just been, or less impressive, yeah, more impressive losses, I guess. The Jets have just looked bad for weeks. That was not a good game showing by them, so I'm bringing them down 4 spots. Call me crazy, call me critical, because I actually did won this week, I guess. But at some point I have to start punishing the Jets, especially with the teams around them doing well. -4, I think 28 is still a solid spot, but I mean, I guess you can fight off a couple other reasons because their defense is kind of solid. But I mean, when you perform that poorly, even against it's just very against Commanders, it's just whatever. Tennessee Titans, I think there's a lot to like about this team. I just think it's a lot of mid, too. I think the O-line is horrendous, and I think that everything else about the team might make them a little bit more of a contender. They need to work on the secondary, the O-line. If they can just give Will Levis a little bit more help, I think they can also do a lot well there. I think they could be a mid-team here in the next couple seasons, but right now, they look kind of poor. Giants, bench Tommy DeVito, don't know why they did it, but overall, I guess their team's all right. Shrug, I guess. It's like a very mediocre, lower average team. Justin Fields and the Bears and the defense of the Bears are really making a real case for the Bears to actually be some contenders in some future seasons. I think a lot of us had high expectations for the Bears after the really good offseason, and now they have an even better offseason probably coming up because they still have a lot of cap space. They have some good draft picks. It's hard not to see the Bears actually climbing these rankings really easily in the future, and they're already looking like an all-right team. So especially in a weaker NFC, I think the Bears have a real shot being more, but right now I think they're still a good solid 25 spot where there's potential, but we'll see. Chargers, they've been decreasing for ages. I'm sure they'll increase in my rankings for beating the Broncos this next week, but beside the point, the Chargers overall, I think their roster is just too, I think they just don't care anymore, and I think it's just affecting their play. I still think they have a solid roster, but it's hard when they're not executing the teams and not executing the actual actions of the team. The Chargers, falling down this rankings have fallen from like the 13th spot all the way to 24. It's really sad to see, but Brandon Staley's gone, so we'll see what goes from there. Falcons, I got to give them their flowers. They look all right. They're doing all right. When they actually use their pieces, they're good. Their defense is fine. Whatever. The Falcons, I do think I've given a lot of discredit to, so I'll give them a little bit more credit here. They still are in contention to win the divisional and go to the playoffs. I don't like the team. I don't like the coach. I don't like what their status is, but I can't deny they do win games, and they do have an all-right roster when they actually use them. So, pretty all right. Got the Raiders. I gave them the +2 purely based on their defense because their defense carried them that game. Obviously, the run game also worked out pretty well for them, and it was a very impressive win over the Chiefs. And just know the 22 to 21 spot had a big gap in between it, so now the Raiders have pretty much closed that gap to make it nothing. So the Raiders looked really good. I think there's a lot to like on their defense. I just think their offense is in shambles right now. Devontae Adams doesn't want to be there. Jacoby Myers has sparks, but not quite there yet. The offensive line is weaker. The run game, while it's good at times, it's also bad at times. It's just a lot to really dislike about the Raiders, but they have a lot of potential to win. So we'll see. I mean, it's a big win, so +2 gives them that. Broncos, and they're showing against Patriots, they really showed they don't want to make the playoffs. And now with the whole Russell Wilson getting benched, we'll see what the future of the Broncos actually looks like. It's a weird spot for the Broncos to be in. We'll see how Jarrett Stidham does this next week, but overall, that offense looked pretty poor. The defense actually picked up a lot of slack a little bit, and they kind of let off in the second half, which is unfortunate, but I mean, it happens. But I don't think the game was nearly as bad as a lot of people show it. I think just it was the poor Russell Wilson play, and honestly, probably the weapons play too. It's unfortunate, but the Broncos do go down -1 and really close that gap between them and the Raiders. The Colts, -2. I don't know what to think about the Colts anymore. I think they were a really good playoff potential type team, and then all of a sudden I just don't know how to feel about them. It's just that they have good moments at times, and their run game sucks at times, and their run game's good. Then Gardner Minshew's good, then Gardner Minshew's bad. Their defense actually makes stops, then their defense actually lets up a bunch of points. I don't know what to think about the Colts. I think the only thing that's consistent is pretty much their O-line, and even that's kind of shaky at times. Either way, -2. I still think they're a top 20 team, but it's rough. Saints, I think I have given a lot of discredit to this season, but I think there is a lot to like about the Saints. I like Derek Carr there. I know a lot of people there don't like Derek Carr. I know a lot of Saints fans don't like Derek Carr. I'm starting to appreciate the Saints more, and because if you didn't know, I'm an NFC, like my NFC team is the Saints. And I like the Saints. I've liked them. I just kind of been on a downhill trek with them because they haven't been interesting. They've been really hurt. They've been really old. And they still kind of are that. But there's a lot to like. There's a lot of explosiveness from them. And I like to see them play. I'm starting to warm up to their games. I just don't think they're a complete team. They're fine, like about average. They're about probably the definition of an average team in the NFL. The Houston Texans, I think, are just in a slump right now. They have a good potential defense, like I've said for ages. It sometimes shows, it sometimes doesn't. Obviously, this last week was a poor showing from them, so they get a -3. But with CJ Stroud coming back and the offense maybe getting a little bit more rolling, I could see them being back in the top 16, and I could see them being easily a top 15, top 10 team even next season when they get more pieces and they're able to build off the current roster they have. Got the Steelers, and I'll tell you what, they are forever going to be in the top tier of the third column and the bottom tier of the second column because they're always going to go 9-8. They're always going to be all right. They're always going to be solid. They're going to miss the playoffs probably, but they're going to get that fucking positive record. I'll tell you that by much. It's weird. The Steelers are fine. They win at +4. Really impressive showing against the Bengals. Can't really say much else there. Vikings, definition of mid, I guess. Also, I guess from the Vikings, the Saints, honestly, in their own ways, are mid. The Vikings, Nick Mullins is really good, but also really bad. The run game's horrible. Defense is shoddy at best. The receivers carry them. I don't know. I've never seen receivers carry a quarterback as much as I have with Nick Mullins. I think Nick Mullins is so overrated, or has been getting a lot more credit than he deserves. I don't think when you watch him, he's that good. He's not horrible, but like it's just he's a backup. People are making him out to be, another player. I've said give credit or give people shots, and the fact they benched Josh Dobbs, who has proven out throughout the season that he's all right. We talked about Tommy DeVito getting benched now. Zach Wilson's been benched. Give these younger guys a shot. I get it. They're not good. They're considered backups. Give them a shot. What else do you have to lose? It's just insane. It gets on my nerves. Nick Mullins not very great, but Vikings are all right, I guess. Packers. I know that a lot of people were going to shit on their play against the Panthers. I know they've been kind of cold lately. I don't know if it's necessarily bad. They've just been cold lately. And I think Jordan Love's still good. He's getting more comfortable in the pocket. His weapons are kind of inconsistent, which is kind of rough. Their defense has been struggling recent weeks. So the fact they give him +2 over a Panthers win that wasn't great. It's just the fact that a lot of teams in the kind of Jaguars to Colts, the Broncos range, the Raiders even, are just really just not great teams. And they're just okay. And I do consider the Packers slightly above average, while I think every team below them are average to below average, I guess. It's weird at that point. So I think the Packers have a lot of potential, but maybe they're on that fringe of like, okay, they could be an average team if Jordan Love doesn't pan out or their defense is shoddy this game. I think they could be an easy 22 team, or they could be an easy top 10 team, depending on their play each week. So seems like a 15 is a nice little middle ground. Then we're getting to basically what my playoff looks would kind of be. Obviously, it's not exactly right because I don't take that into account. I don't take standings really that much into account, but Jaguars have been piss poor. Their defense has been playing very poorly. Trevor Lawrence obviously has been hurt for several weeks now. Calvin Ridley's been carrying them. Christian Kirk's been hurt. The offensive line's been existing. It's just really rough in Jacksonville. They're not getting these key wins. I don't know if it's coaching or if it's just the team's banged up and just ready to go home. And I know they want to make the playoffs, and they've really set themselves up early in the season to make the playoffs, but they really are starting to blow it, and it's really rough after all these weeks that we're really putting them down in top 14. And I used to consider them like a close top 5 team, and now they're just showing a lot of weakness around their whole roster. And I hate to say it, but I think they are the 14th ranked team currently. Bucks, meanwhile, are kind of back a little bit. They used to be in the 14, then they dropped down probably 20 or 21, before. Now they're back up to 13. They've worked their way back up gradually. Baker Mayfield's look really good. The rosters recently look really good. I think they're still in that mid category, but with explosiveness. It's almost like they kind of like a softer version, more diluted version of the Rams. So I really like seeing the Bucks do as well as they have, and I think they have a lot of potential. We'll see if they can kind of make use of it. Meanwhile, the Browns, honestly, the reason the Browns are not even higher than they should be, honestly, you could probably argue they're above the Seahawks, but I'm still keeping them being very hesitant because Joe Flacco is a freaking beast. The defense, I think, has softened them up to the point where I think they're diminishing Joe Flacco's returns, I guess. I think Joe Flacco's been doing good. I think before that, the Browns' defense was doing really good. Now it's kind of swapped back and forth. I think Joe Flacco's the answer there for Cleveland into the short term in terms of winning a Super Bowl. I think they have the roster for it. Their run game, even without Nick Chubb this whole season, has been really, really good. And they're actually competing really well. They're actually the leading wild card contender in the AFC, which is really impressive for the strength of that conference this year. And while I do think they could be a little bit higher, I like what I see from the Seahawks. I think they just play very consistently good football with some low points, and it's kind of weird because I've realized when I critique Seahawk football, it's mostly because I think I see a game and they don't play to the level that I saw from last season, which was arguably an easy top 10 team. And this season, they have spurts of that. They have a lot of spurts of that. Then all of a sudden, I see a game where, Geno doesn't look good, or DK doesn't look good, or Kenneth Walker doesn't look good. Defenses look fine throughout the whole season, I think. But it's just weird that I'm critiquing, I think, poorly of the Seahawks purely because they're not playing to a top 10 level all the time. And I think they're still easily probably a top 11 team. I think you put them against the Browns, I think they could still easily win. But it's pretty close. I think the Seahawks and Browns are pretty close. But I think I'm going to give the edge to the Seahawks just based on the inconsistency of the Browns. Now we get into our top 10, and I finally have done it. The Rams have worked themselves up into the top 10, because I genuinely believe if you're in the NFC, you do not want to face the Rams in the playoffs. You do not. This is a scary team who are either going to self-destruct on themselves or self-destruct on the others. And it's going to be really, really cool watching the Rams make the playoffs, because they are going to make the playoffs 100%. This offense is too good. The only downside is that if the offense ends up not winning against a... Sorry, well, let me repeat that. Let me rephrase that, I should say. If the Rams end up playing a really good defense and end up scoring less than 20, they're probably going to lose. Because I think they win shootouts as long as they're not playing amazing defense. I think the NFC has been very weak on the defensive side of the ball for the most part. But I'm just very curious. Whoever is at, I think they're the 5 seed currently. The Rams are. No, 6 seed. My beat. I forgot about that because the Cowboys and Eagles swapped that back and forth. They're the 6 seed currently. You do not want to be the 3rd seed facing off against the Rams. I think it's the Lions, actually. It's either the Lions or the... Yeah, I think it's the Lions, I think. I'm trying to think of any other team that could be. But I think it's the Lions. Either way, you don't want to face the Rams in the playoffs because they're easy. They're going to beat somebody in the wild card. They can even beat somebody in the divisional. I don't think they're going to be the Super Bowl representatives because I think their defense is too battered, and I think their offense is still got some pieces they could work on. I think the Rams are going to be consistently for the future going to be near this top 14 to 10 team type deal. Like a fringe top 10 team for the foreseeable future. I just don't see them ever being elite again, just based on how many holes they have to fill, and more holes are going to keep on happening just due to the age of that roster. It's unfortunate, but I think the Rams are still very scary. And right ahead of them is a team that used to be very scary, number 9, the Chiefs. Honestly, the Chiefs are only staying this high based on their name alone. I'll be honest with you. If there's almost any other team, they probably would be outside the top 10 pretty easily. But the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. They still play to a high level. Patrick Mahomes still puts up really good numbers. The defense is still a monster on the field. It's just that offense has struggled so much in so many weeks against teams they should easily beat. The Raiders being the prime example there. Luckily, it's a divisional game, so you can give them a little bit more of a leeway. But if I'm looking at top 8 teams, I'm thinking if the Chiefs face off against any of those top 8 teams, even if they face the Rams in the Super Bowl or something, maybe even the Browns, I could see the Chiefs losing to everybody up to the number 12 spot. Like, pretty easily is what I'm saying. In terms of how they're playing now, I think the top 12 teams can beat the Chiefs. or at least have a really good chance to. I think when you get the Bucks, the Jags, the Packers, and Vikings, unless the Chiefs just absolutely detonate on themselves like they did with the Raiders, I think that they have a real shot of losing that game. While before, I think the Chiefs were an easy team to beat any other team in the NFL. Beside the point, I think you look at the top 8 teams, I'm thinking, if I'm the Chiefs, I don't want to face any of them. I don't. With how you're playing and what you're doing, I think you're at number 9 based on name alone right now. And I'm giving number 9 because I respect the Chiefs and I respect how they played, and I respect that their losses have been bad, but there's a reason for many of their games, them losing, I guess. Because at one point, like, you had a close game with the Jags, and, but you can consider the Jags a pretty good team at that point. The Lions, they had a close game with the Lions that they lost to, but the Lions were also considered a really explosive, really good team. Also, getting into the new season, kind of rough. Then you get to 2 divisional game losses with the Broncos and Raiders. I think you can kind of understand that one. Bills, really good team. They lost to the Bills. It's really hard to really pinpoint the Chiefs because they haven't had a horrible loss. I think the Raiders, you could argue, is their first really bad loss. Even then, I don't know if it's really horrible because their defense still played well. But it's just really, really difficult to see the Chiefs being one of those Super Bowl contending teams. Obviously, they're still the Chiefs, so I still think they're going to have a really good shot, but it's going to be something to see. Then you get the Bengals, and I think the Bengals are finally starting to slip a little bit. I think Jake Browning's starting to lose that momentum he had, and I think there's still really good chance of them making the playoffs. I don't think they will, but I think with their play recently, I think that's kind of the nail in the coffin of the Jake Browning story. I think Jake Browning's still very good. It's just that it's going to be really difficult for that defense to help carry, and Jake Browning to stay consistent as he is now that he's facing higher caliber teams, and even then, Steelers aren't higher caliber. They're just divisional opponent. So we'll see what the Bengals kind of turn out here for the rest of this season, especially, but now they're facing the Chiefs now, and I think they just can only go down from here. I still think they're probably going to be an easy top 14 roster, but I think with the unfortunate side of the AFC, they're just not going to make it. Cowboys, they've been on a slump these last 2 weeks. Hopefully they pick it back up. They have a really tough game with the Dolphins, so that'll be a really big contender for them. Either way, though, I think the Cowboys still easy top 8 team, but they've definitely fallen off the elite tier type deal. Eagles, I think they're still on the fringe of it. I mean, they face off against divisional opponent against Giants. I think people are blowing up that game more than they should. The Eagles are solid roster. It's kind of similar to the Seahawks in the way of Eagles have a solid roster, solid team, and just because they haven't been playing number 1 team type football, everybody's disappointing in them when they're probably still playing easily top 10 football. So I think you can't harsh them too much and still end up winning a lot of their games. Sure, they were on a slump. They had a 5 weeks of hell type game series with like 5 elite teams, the Cowboys twice, 49ers, Bills, Chiefs, I think, yeah. And they won 3 of those 2 games, or 3 of those 5 games. It's difficult not to say, okay, that's a roster that can be a top 10 team easy. I still think the Eagles are still easily almost top 5 roster, but I have to finally give the Lions, I don't know if I have put Lions in top 5 yet this season, they deserve top 5. They now have solidified, I think, that. And I think they have a tough game coming up this week. I forgot, man, I keep on forgetting all the setups, because Cowboys and Dolphins just faced off. I'm an idiot. That's right. Okay, now I've caught myself back up. Now the Lions are facing off with the Dolphins. That's the big game here. Okay. Either way, the Lions, I think, have been really, really good, and I think their defense has been holding up enough to keep them in that elite tier. I think their offense is easily one of the best in this whole NFL league, but their defense is what's holding them back just a little bit, and Dan Campbell's a monster and a beast out there. I think finally you got to give the Lions their top 5 spot. Meanwhile, you got the Dolphins, and I finally saw what I wanted from the Dolphins, and was the Cowboys game. Now, all this is coming back to me. I think Tua played one of the best games of the season. Not that it was the biggest stat-wise. It was just I saw Tua not just chuck it down the field to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek. Obviously, they still did that. But he utilized his running backs. He utilized his tight ends. He utilized a couple of the receivers on the lower end. And was actually able to get like smaller plays down the field against a good defense who he knew he couldn't just chunk down passes the whole time too. And not to say that that's all his character was. That's all they really needed to do. And now they were forced to do something different and succeeded against a good defense. And that's what I wanted to see from the Dolphins. If they keep that up, they could be easily the representative in the Super Bowl over even the Ravens. And that's the crazy part here, because the Dolphins and Ravens face off this week, so that's even cooler. It's just this is such a good team. It's just I don't know if they're used to that play, and I think when they get forced to do that more consistently in the playoffs, I don't think they will be able to keep it up. Either way, they are now the number 4 team in the NFL to me. And despite the 49ers loss, they are the number 3 team still. I think the Bills have been playing amazing football, and I think the Ravens obviously beat them, so they're number 1. But The 49ers are still easily top 3. I don't think you can put any team below them, above them, because I think the 49ers are still elite. They had enough of a cushion to keep them easily in that conversation. They had one bad game. Brock Purdy threw 2 picks that weren't his fault pretty much at all. One pick that was pretty rough, and one pick you can kind of argue either way, but I'd probably still Brock Purdy's fault. And the Ravens are a good team, and the 49ers were still able to keep it close. The Ravens played smart football instead of just trying to get out ahead all the time. They just ran the football and killed the clock. Well, the 49ers were still trying to play smart football. Say what you will, I think Brock Purdy had one bad game. Oh well, toss it in trash and move on. 49ers defense held up super well, even though it was a little rough at times near the end, but at that point the game was kind of getting to a close. They contained Lamar very well. They got a safety early on, granted it was because of a ref, but beside the point, 49ers looked really good still, and they are still easily one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL. I just think, obviously, to give them a little discredit because it was a bad game. Many of these other teams haven't had a bad game recently. And I got to give the Bills credit. They are starting to destroy and go out there and prove to themselves that they are the team that is going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. They want to do it. They are hungry to do it. And again, I said before, the Bills' Super Bowl time is closed, and I still think that's going to be the case. I still think the Bills will not make the Super Bowl. But the Bills are making a case saying maybe we got 1-2 more seasons that we can do it. We got one class stressed. You know, we're almost irrelevant here in the AFC, but man, we are planning on making it. And I respect the hell out of that, and they've been playing amazing football the last few weeks and really making themselves a case for the AFC, if not their whole division with the Dolphins. So it's kind of really cool in that way. Either way, they're not number 1 because the Ravens are easily number 1 right now. Ravens have been playing amazing football. Their defense has been holding up super, super well. Lamar is a beast, and the receivers are actually really, really explosive at times. Odell catches really good passes. Zay Flowers is good in the slot. And then you got Isaiah Likely coming out of the woodwork to really fill in that Mark Andrews sore spot. I think the Ravens are just a completely good team, like the Eagles kind of were last year. I think the Ravens are playing like that now, and that's just kind of straight and to the point. I got this almost in sub 20. Oh well. I went through and talked about all these teams, especially top 10, pretty extensively, so I liked it. If you like this video, let me know, and leave a comment down below about what you agree with and what you don't. StraightA Dawson, out.